My family treated me like I was worthless, so I walked away for 9 years. Then I returned to confront them in the most brutal way possible. As a child, I always felt like I was stuck in my older sister Amelia's shadow. She was everything. Our parents admired, smart, hardworking, and always getting perfect grades. Amelia had a natural ability to focus and stay determined, which made her seem perfect in their eyes. On the other hand, I was completely different. I had a hard time paying attention in school, put things off until the last minute, and often forgot important tasks. It wasn't just school where I struggled. These problems affected all parts of my life, making me feel like I would never be good enough. I didn't understand why I was this way, and for a long time, I thought I was just lazy or not capable. It wasn't until years later that everything made sense. I was diagnosed with ADHD. That diagnosis changed everything. Suddenly, all the struggles I had faced as a child had a reason. Every problem I had, from not being able to concentrate to always putting things off, fit perfectly with ADHD. With the right medicine and other helpful tools, I was able to take control of my life in ways I never thought possible. But back then, when I was younger, I didn't have a diagnosis, support, or understanding. My parents only saw my weaknesses. To explain a bit more, my parents are both very successful people. They are highly respected in their jobs and work, in important academic positions. Because of this, they expected Amelia and me to be just as successful as them. Amelia, of course, met their expectations easily. I, however, was the problem child. To them, I wasn't working hard enough, wasn't responsible enough, and simply wasn't good enough. They constantly compared me to Amelia, their favorite child, which only made things worse between us. Those comparisons hurt me more than they probably realized, making me feel like something was wrong with me just because I wasn't like her. Amelia didn't make things any easier either. Since we went to the same school, I felt like I could never escape her or her constant judgment. If I failed to finish my homework on time or got in trouble, she would yell at me, saying she was embarrassed to have a loser as a sibling. Her words hurt even more because she was supposed to be someone I could look up to. At home, Amelia would tell on me for the smallest things, like spending time with my friends instead of studying. She always looked for ways to prove to our parents that she was the better child. I think part of the reason she acted that way was that, unlike me, Amelia didn't have any friends. She was the type of person who always acted like she knew everything, treated others like they were beneath her, and never missed a chance to point out someone else's mistakes. It was no surprise that people didn't like her. She distanced herself from others, and instead of reflecting on why that was, she became even more arrogant. Despite her shortcomings, my parents absolutely adored her. They never once corrected her behavior or encouraged her to be kinder or more humble. Instead, they treated her like she was perfect. They constantly bragged about Amelia at family gatherings, at work, to our neighbors, and to anyone who would listen. Every year, they threw huge birthday parties for her, filled with fancy decorations, guests, and expensive gifts. They made it clear that Amelia was the one worth celebrating. In their words, she was the only good thing to come out of their marriage. Can you imagine hearing your own parents say something like that about your sibling, as if you were nothing? Meanwhile, my birthdays were barely acknowledged. There were no parties, no excitement. Each year, I received the same gift, books. Not the fun, imaginative ones that kids enjoy, but educational books that practically screamed, "You need to work harder." When Amelia graduated from college, it was a huge event for our family. She had gotten into one of the country's top universities, and my parents were beyond thrilled. They wouldn't stop talking about her success, proudly telling everyone how accomplished she was. 2 years later, when I graduated, the reaction was completely different. I hadn't been accepted into a prestigious university like Amelia. Instead, I got into an average school, one that, in my parents' eyes, didn't carry the same status. Their disappointment was obvious. My dad didn't even try to hide it. He told me outright that he had no hopes for me anymore. He said he just wanted me out of their lives because he was too embarrassed to tell our relatives where I was going to college. Hearing my own father basically disown me just because I didn't meet his impossible expectations was devastating. My parents called me the black sheep of the family. They said they regretted having me, and that raising me had been a waste of their time and money. Amelia didn't hold back either. She made it clear that she was disgusted by my choice of college. She told me that even though she never expected me to reach her level of academic success, I should have at least tried harder. Her words cut deep. No matter what I did, my best was never good enough for them. That was the moment I made my decision. If they truly felt this way about me, if they really believed I wasn't worth their time or love, then I would do them a favor and cut them off. I refused to stay in an environment that only tore me down. I promised myself that I would create my own path no matter how difficult it was and that I wouldn't look back. Starting college was like stepping into a new chapter of my life, but it came with its own struggles. I had to take out a student loan just to afford it, and I also worked a part-time job to support myself, balancing work, school, and managing. My ADHD was extremely tough. There were times when I felt like giving up, but I pushed through. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who believed in me, friends who encouraged me, who saw my potential instead of my flaws. With their support and the right medication to manage my ADHD, I started building a life that felt meaningful and fulfilling. I am currently working as an AI solutions architect at a leading multinational company. For the past 9 years, I have had absolutely no contact with my parents or my sister, nor have I made any effort to keep up with their lives. I have worked hard to distance myself from that chapter of my past, because it only brought me pain. I usually stay away from family gatherings to avoid any accidental encounters with my parents or Amelia. However, this time was different. It was my granddad's 80th birthday, and he personally called me, pleading for me to attend. I hadn't seen him in years, and he was one of the few family members who had always been kind to me. The thought of disappointing him on such an important occasion filled me with guilt, so despite my reservations, I decided to go. When I arrived at the party, I quickly noticed that my parents were already there. I had expected this, of course, but seeing them again after so many years still brought back emotions I wasn't fully prepared for. Still, I reminded myself why I was there. This was about celebrating my granddad. I greeted him quietly, gave him a hug, and then spent time saying hello to other family members. Many of them hadn't seen me in nearly a decade and were genuinely surprised and happy to catch up. Then my parents noticed me. Their faces showed pure shock, as if they couldn't believe I was actually there. Almost immediately, my dad walked over, his expression unreadable, and asked if he could speak with me in private. I nodded, and he led me away from the main gathering, guiding me to a quieter corner of the venue where we wouldn't be overheard. From the very beginning, it was clear that my parents were not pleased to see me. There were no polite greetings, no attempts at reconciliation, not even a hint of warmth. The first thing my dad said was blunt and cold. "What are you doing here?" I kept my voice calm and told him that I had come because my granddad had personally invited me and that I couldn't just ignore his request. My mom wasn't satisfied with that answer. She immediately questioned why I had never attended any of my granddad's previous birthday celebrations or other family gatherings, yet had suddenly decided to show up now. She taunted me, suggesting that using my granddad as an excuse was just a cover-up, that I had finally come to my senses and was looking for a way to reconnect with them after all these years. Her words infuriated me, but I remained composed. I firmly told them that I had no intention of reconnecting with them. I didn't need their approval to be at my own granddad's party. If my presence bothered them so much, they could simply ignore me, just as they had done for the past 9 years, and let me enjoy the event with other relatives. But my mom insisted that ignoring me wasn't an option because people would start asking them questions. She argued that I should have at least given them a heads up before coming so they could have been prepared with answers. She was acting as if I had done something terrible just by showing up. I told her that if anyone asked about me, they could simply say that I was doing well, that I had built a successful career, and that I had a supportive partner. My dad scoffed at that. He looked at me with pure disbelief and said, "Do you honestly expect us to believe that you have a successful career? You didn't even graduate from a decent college, for goodness sake." A surge of anger rose inside me. I had worked tirelessly to build my career from nothing, overcoming countless obstacles along the way. Yet here he was, dismissing all of my accomplishments with just one cruel sentence. Before I could even respond, my dad pointed toward the door and coldly said, "You should leave. People can't know you're still a failure." I was completely shocked. Who did they think they were to demand that I leave a party that had nothing to do with them? How could they still treat me this way after all these years? They were so obsessed with maintaining their perfect image, pretending to be superior in front of others. Their cruel and dismissive words made me realize that, in their minds, I was still the same helpless child they could control. But I wasn't that person anymore. If they were so worried about what others might think, I decided it was time to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Without hesitating, I brushed past them and made my way back to where the rest of the guests were gathered. My granddad immediately noticed that something was wrong and came over to check on me. I didn't hold anything back. I told him everything, how my parents had spoken to me, how they had tried to force me out of the party, and how they were still so ashamed of me that they didn't even want people to know I was there. Hearing this, my granddad was furious. He assured me that my parents had no right to treat me that way, let alone try to ruin his birthday with their drama. He offered to speak to them on my behalf, but I told him it wouldn't change anything. What we needed to do was bring the truth to light in front of everyone. Thankfully, my granddad agreed. I picked up my glass and lightly clinked it to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my voice and began by congratulating my granddad on reaching such an incredible milestone. I thanked him for inviting me and expressed how much it meant to be there celebrating with him. Then, I shifted gears. I told everyone how nice it was to see so many family members again after so many years, but I also addressed the question that I knew was on many of their minds. I'm sure some of you are wondering why I haven't attended any family events for nearly a decade, so I'm going to tell you the truth. It was because of my parents. I laid everything out. I told them how my parents had always looked down on me, making me feel like I was nothing more than a burden. I explained how, for years, they had pushed me aside, making it clear that I was never good enough in their eyes. I shared how I had struggled to pay for my own education, taking out loans and working part-time jobs without a single ounce of support from them. And while I had fought to build a life for myself, they had never once reached out to check on me. The entire room was silent as I spoke. Some guests exchanged awkward glances, while others stared directly at my parents, who looked absolutely horrified. My mom had gone completely pale, while my dad's face was twisted with fury, but I didn't stop there. I revealed how, throughout my entire childhood, my parents had always favored Amelia, showering her with love, attention, and endless opportunities, while treating me like the black sheep of the family. I explained how their constant comparisons and harsh treatment had driven a wedge between us, how they had dismissed my struggles with ADHD as mere laziness, and how they had never once tried to understand or support me. I continued by stating that now, as a grown adult who had achieved success on my own terms, I had no illusions that my parents would suddenly accept me with open arms. However, what I truly hadn't expected was for them to go as far as reprimanding me for attending my own granddad's birthday celebration, a gathering I had been personally invited to by the man we were all there to honor. Their behavior wasn't just unreasonable. It was deeply hurtful, and I wanted everyone to understand just how absurd their actions were. For all those years when I was absent from family events, it wasn't because I was being cold or distant. I was protecting myself. I was trying to heal from the emotional scars they had inflicted on me. Yet today, when I showed up solely for my granddad's sake, my parents attempted to push me out. They repeatedly claimed that answering questions about me made them feel ashamed, that my presence was an embarrassment to them. That was exactly why I felt compelled to address this issue openly, right here, in front of everyone, once and for all. I was done hiding. I was done letting them make me feel like I was the problem. From this moment on, I vowed to attend every single family gathering, regardless of whether my parents approved or not. As I finished speaking, my granddad and several of my cousins erupted in applause, then approached me to embrace me, offering their support. My parents, however, stood frozen, at a complete loss for words. Now that the truth was out in the open, they could no longer manipulate the narrative. For years, they had controlled how others perceived our relationship, but now everyone could see them for who they truly were and understand the way they had treated me. Shortly after, my parents hastily left the party, clearly humiliated, while I remained, enjoying the rest of the evening in the company of my cousins and other close relatives. In the days following the incident, numerous family members reached out to express their support, commending me for finally speaking my truth. Some admitted that it took immense courage for me to stand up for myself and expose the unfair treatment I had endured for so long. A few even apologized for not realizing what I had gone through sooner, or for failing to reach out to me in the past. However, not everyone agreed with how I handled the situation. A handful of relatives felt that I should have kept the matter private, arguing that confronting my parents so publicly and embarrassing them in front of the entire family was excessive. Now for an update, I have to say, the overwhelming kindness in all of your comments has truly touched me. I'm incredibly grateful for the number of people who have checked in on my well-being. For those wondering, I'm doing just fine. Mentally, I've come a long way. Throughout my childhood, I grew accustomed to being treated like I was worthless. It was painful, and I carried that burden with me for years. But as I grew older, I learned to stand up for myself. The moment at the party was a culmination of all the emotions I had bottled up for so long, truths I had kept buried. And honestly, I'm glad I spoke out. I have absolutely no regrets about defending myself and finally allowing my family to hear my side of the story. For those curious about Amelia's whereabouts during the party, she wasn't there. One of my cousins mentioned that she was away on a work trip, which explains why I didn't run into her. And honestly, I'm relieved. Had she been there, she likely would have jumped at the chance to side with my parents and throw more insults my way. Amelia has always been quick to belittle me, so her absence felt like a small mercy. Some of you have asked why, during those difficult times, I didn't turn to other family members for financial help when my parents refused to support me. The truth is, back then, I was young, naive, and easily influenced by their words. When my parents and Amelia mocked me, called me a failure, ridiculed my college, and questioned my worth, I internalized every bit of it. I truly believed that. The rest of my family saw me the same way. The idea of exposing our family issues to others, only to risk more rejection, was terrifying. I was also stubbornly independent. I convinced myself that no matter how hard it got, I would handle everything on my own. As for my granddad, I want to emphasize that he has always supported me in his own way. Unfortunately, he hasn't been financially stable, so I couldn't have relied on him to help with my college expenses. But emotionally, he was always one of the few people in my family who treated me with kindness. His emotional support has meant everything to me. He has always believed in me and understood the complicated relationship between me and my parents. He knows every single detail of my story and has never judged me for choosing to cut ties with them. I am truly grateful that he gave me the chance to speak at his party and stood by my side when I decided to reveal the truth about my parents. Since that night, I have heard from several relatives that my parents are now facing serious criticism from people who were shocked to find out how badly they had treated me. Many of them had no idea about the full extent of their actions because for years my parents had gone around making me look like the problem. It is clear now that they had carefully shaped this false story to protect their own reputation while hiding their toxic behavior. But now that the truth is out, their perfect image is finally falling apart. I can only hope that this embarrassment makes them realize their mistakes. Maybe, just maybe, they will take a hard look at their actions and change. But even if they don't, I have spoken my truth, and that alone gives me a deep sense of relief and closure. Update 2. This week, Amelia contacted me. She had heard about everything that happened at the party from both our parents and other relatives, and she immediately called me. The moment I answered, she started yelling, completely furious about the situation. She was outraged that I had dared to call out our parents in front of everyone. She claimed I only did it to create drama and that my actions were selfish. Amelia said I had no right to talk about our family's problems in front of so many people, especially since our parents had spent years trying to move on and forget about me. She kept saying that I had destroyed the fragile peace they had built and that I should have just let the past stay in the past. Then she demanded, "What do you even want from them? An apology? Really?" She went on, "Do you think they should apologize just because they didn't pay for your college? Because they were disappointed in you? Because they pushed you to do better? Because they only wanted the best for you?" I let out a small laugh because, honestly, I wasn't surprised. Amelia had always defended our parents, no matter how unfairly they treated me. She never cared about the pain I went through and always acted like it was just normal family problems. For her, it was easier to pretend everything was fine rather than admit the truth. I told her that pushing someone to be better doesn't mean insulting them, making them feel worthless, or tearing them down when they don't meet impossible expectations. What I needed from our parents wasn't more pressure. I needed love, support, and understanding. I told her how much I had wished they could have accepted me for who I was and helped me deal with my struggles instead of making me feel like a failure. I never expected them to be perfect parents, but I just wanted them to care about me and stand by my side instead of constantly making me feel like a disappointment. Amelia refused to understand. She said that if I really felt this way, I should have handled it privately instead of embarrassing our parents in front of the whole family. She said they had worked hard for years to build their reputation, and now all people could talk about was how badly they had treated me. Then she asked if it was really worth it, acting like I had only done this because I was bitter. She even hinted that maybe I hadn't achieved anything in life, because if I had, I wouldn't have felt the need to expose our parents after all this time. I simply laughed at her words and calmly told her that, despite all the awful things our parents and she had put me through, I had managed to build a successful career. My decision to expose our parents had nothing to do with my achievements. It was about finally taking control of my own story after years of being ignored and silenced. They had pushed me aside and made me out to be the problem, but the reality was that I was the one who had been mistreated. Speaking out wasn't about proving how far I had come or trying to make them look bad. It was about standing up for myself and making sure people finally knew the truth about what had been happening behind closed doors. Amelia refused to back down and kept insisting that I should issue a public apology to protect our parents' reputation, but I cut her off immediately. I told her straight up that I would never do that. Why should I apologize when I was the one who had been wronged? I told her she needed to pull her head out of the sand and stop defending people who had treated me horribly my entire life. Just to annoy her even more, I added that from now on, I would be attending every single family event, no matter how much it upset her or our parents. And if they ever dared to confront me again, I wouldn't hesitate to expose them further. Why should I let their toxic behavior control my relationships with the rest of the family? I had every right to spend time with my relatives and build connections with them. Amelia accused me of doing all this just to make our parents' lives miserable. She demanded that I go back to cutting myself off from everyone, just like I had done for all those years. I let out a frustrated sigh, realizing that there was no way she and I would ever see eye to eye. So I told her to stay in her own lane and mind her own business from now on. I wasn't going to tolerate any more of her attempts to defend our parents or justify their actions. With that, I ended the call and blocked her number. I owed her nothing. No explanations and certainly no apologies. Update 3. I just wanted to share a quick update on everything that has happened over the last 4 months. First of all, I've made a conscious effort to be more involved in family life. I make it a priority to attend all our family gatherings, whether they are big celebrations like birthdays and anniversaries or smaller, more casual get-togethers. Apart from that, I have also been making an effort to spend more time with my granddad, ensuring that I visit him frequently and check on how he is doing. Additionally, I have been socializing more with my cousins. Whenever we make plans, whether it is having a meal together, watching a film, or simply enjoying an activity, I make sure to take part. It has been wonderful to build stronger relationships with them and create fresh memories. Last month, my mother finally apologized after all these years. It was a significant moment for me. Since I have both my mother and father blocked on my phone, she had to contact me through email. She explained that she had been attending therapy and had spent a great deal of time thinking about the past. She acknowledged that she and my father had, in some ways, given my sister more attention than me. She attempted to explain this by saying that because she and my father were brought up in strict, academically driven households, they always expected Amelia and me to reach the same high standards. She continued by saying that when I stood up for myself at my granddad's celebration and disclosed that I had ADHD, it changed her perspective. She admitted that after that day, she conducted her own research and finally understood that I genuinely had ADHD. She confessed that she felt regret for not recognizing the signs earlier and for failing to support me when I needed it the most as a child. In her email, she also mentioned that she had been quietly following my career for the past few months on LinkedIn. She expressed how proud she was of everything I had achieved. Toward the conclusion of her message, she also brought up my father. While she stated that he was aware of my accomplishments as well, she acknowledged that he is a very stubborn man and would likely require more time before he is prepared to apologize. Honestly, reading her message left me stunned. If only she had shown this level of understanding when I was younger, my childhood could have been completely different. That being said, even after receiving her email, I have not unblocked her or my father. I am still not ready to forgive them.